So you should all be getting your prompts about consenting to record. And who else is with us? Oh, Marcia, you're with us. Good. Hello there. Boom job. And okay. So we have 11 of you. That's pretty good. Pretty good turnout for today, I think, all things considered. I actually have several announcements, so let me go through those first. The first thing is that the SEIs, which is the Student Evaluation of Instruction, are now available to you. You should have gotten a message from the SEI administration office about that. Did anyone actually get such a message? No, not yet. All right, well, maybe later today you will be getting a message. I'll remind you every chance I get about the SEIs. They're important. Oh, Hannah, you did. Okay, good. And Grace, you got one. Okay, so please be on the lookout for it. Check your spam filters also, because these may get redirected. I think they come from the SEI admin, I think is the and the SEI stands for Student Evaluation of Instruction. These these represent your opportunity to tell me how you think the course is going. You can be brutally honest. And in fact, I wish you would be, because I don't see them until after your grades are posted. They're important to me because they give me, I of course have an idea about how the class is going, but my perceptions are sometimes colored by my wishes, as it were, about how successful particular topics have been, or particular modes of presentation, and so forth. And I understand, I hope that we never have to, I never have to teach this way again, a full semester online, but it may happen. So I'm particularly interested in any comments you might have about the modality of presentation. Please don't rant and rail against the situation with COVID in general. There's nothing we can do about that. But given that background, or that backdrop, any constructive comments you can make about the mode of presentation would be helpful. Even in a post-COVID world, I think online teaching is here to stay, at least in some parts of the university. So it may be something that we all need to get used to, especially me as an instructor. So if you could please do the SEIs when they come. I'm especially, you have the opportunity to both do answer questions on a 1 to 5 scale, if I remember right, and then make some comments. And the comments are often particularly revealing to me, and particularly useful. Anyway, I take them seriously, so please you take them seriously too when you get the opportunity. So be on the lookout for email from the SEI admin, and you might want to check, your spam filter or junk box, or whatever it's called in your mailing system, to see just if maybe it got redirected there. A second comment or announcement. I've put a reading on, this isn't in the syllabus, at least I haven't updated the syllabus, but there's a reading by William Lebov, whom I've mentioned to you a few times throughout the semester. It's a paper of his from 1963 that is a really important, maybe one of the most important papers in historical linguistics and in linguistics in general in the last 60 years. It's a required paper. I want you to read it. We'll be discussing it a week from today. In order there's no assignment associated with it, no homework assignment associated with it. But in order to facilitate your reading, to encourage you to actually read it, there's a study guide that is in the readings module underneath the Labov article. So that I think there are 20 questions maybe in it that'll just sort of help you, sort of page by page through the paper. So please do have a look at that. As I say, there's no official assignment associated with it, though I will spend time discussing it. We will spend time discussing it next Monday because it is such an important paper. So I think that's all I wanted to say about that. On Wednesday of this week, you have the first run through your an abstract for your term paper is due. It was supposed to be due today, as I think I told you a message on Friday, but I had lost track of the due date myself, so it was only fair to give you a little more time. So I tried to explain in my message to you just what an abstract should be. The final project that you produce will be a longer abstract, a 500-word abstract with that outline that I was explained in the assignment, and in my meetings with you, we've talked about. But this shorter abstract for Wednesday is just to get you started in the writing part of the term paper assignment. I'm going to share my screen and give you show you what an abstract could look like by looking at. Hang on a sec here. No, that's not my email. But I hate the way it defaults to that. Clutters things up. Nope. What am I looking for? Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, this is the brochure or a brochure that I produced for Mark Jance's Naylor lecture, and I thought that as an example of what a brief abstract could be, since you all have had the opportunity to either hear the presentation live or look at the video of it. This is a roughly 220-word abstract or description that Mark put together for the lecture. And if you look through it, I realize it's kind of small. Let me blow it up. Blow it up a bit. And there's a picture of Mark. You can see his hair is sort of white or blonde or yellow. I think those are the three different colors that you assign to it, but it's certainly not, it's not dark. So he's a true Northern European, I suppose, in that regard. So here's the description of the lecture. Cappadocian Greek has become a textbook example of a hybrid or mixed language. So he starts out by telling you something about why the topic, which is announced in the title, Cappadocian Greek, the life and times of a language once believed extinct. So he starts out by telling you why it's important, why it's interesting, and then he goes into some of the, what he went into in great detail in the presentation was the history, the historical background, and he covers some of that in the next little descriptive part. So the abstract should be a description of what the paper is about, why it's interesting, or what the topic is about, why it's interesting, what your approach to it is, sort of all summed up for Wednesday in 250 succinct and carefully chosen words. But then he talks a little bit about the history of Cappadocian. He goes on to explain about why it was believed to be extinct, and then how he stumbled upon this discovery that it actually was not extinct, and then sort of sums up things with a little bit more detail about the history and the current situation involving revitalization, use in social media, and such. And there's mention also of the shifting of Cappadocian speakers to Greek due to socioeconomic pressure, discrimination, and negative attitudes about the language. So this gives you this, it sort of encapsulates what he lectured on for 45 minutes or so. And this gives you an example of an abstract. It's descriptive, it's informative, it is in some ways almost like an advertising hook, trying to draw the reader in. Why should the reader find this interesting? What is it about the topic that is compelling, engaging, and such? So that's what I want you to do with your term paper topic and the work that you've done on it so far for Wednesday. And this is challenging, to be sure, and it will oblige you to really get to get going on the paper or the term paper project in ways that maybe you haven't done already, but you will thank me for this, because this will make the final production of the longer abstract and the outline a much easier task. You'll be well on the way to getting that finished. So I'll put this in Carmen for you to have. I guess I could put it, well, I'll put it in Carmen, but I could put it in chat right now, I suppose. Let me see if I can actually stop sharing and do that. It's rather large because there are pictures in it. You get a picture of me for the as a bonus. Oh, good, Marcia, you've already read the Lebov, and it is good. Yeah, it's a fantastic paper.
I like that, and the New York one.
Yeah,
yeah. New York is excellent as well.
Yes, it is. Okay, good. I'll put this in the chat also. Now that it's in the chat, I'll also put it on Carmen. Rebecca, you have a question?
Yeah, do you have, or could you come up with an example of what you would like the outline to sort of look like for us as well?
Yes, I will try. I'll see if I can find one that was submitted in past years. I've done this a few times in the past. Otherwise, the main thing that I as I think I told some of you, what I have in mind for the outline is really just a set of organized bullet points. You don't have to. You may have learned in English class in 9th grade or 10th grade about, you know, a formal structure for an outline with a Roman numeral 1.
Roman numerals.
Yeah, Roman numeral 1, and then a sub entry A under that, a capital A, and a sub entry Roman numeral lowercase under that, and so forth. You don't have to follow anything like that. I don't have a particularly rigid format in mind, but what I do want you to do is to organize the information that you would want to present. So you might think of it in terms of what points are relevant for the introduction, what points are relevant for the development of the body of your paper, and it will differ. Some of you, I think in your case, Rebecca, you're designing an experiment, so your outline would be different from someone who is looking at a controversial etymology, for instance. So there isn't a fixed format that it has to follow, but I do want you to think about the important points of that you would need to make or want to make, and organize them into sort of meaningful clusters. As I say, what's relevant for the introduction, what's relevant for the development of the body of your presentation, what's relevant for what conclusions will you draw, what results do you expect to find, that sort of thing. So I'm more interested in seeing the results of your thinking through the process than any sort of rigid format. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Good. And please, I may not have mentioned this, but please include references. as part of, you can do that as part of the abstract now, or certainly at the final form with the longer abstract, the outline. And I probably should have mentioned this, but also the references, the sources that you have consulted and that you've been using for the paper or project. I keep defaulting to calling it paper, but that implies a certain something which I don't want you to feel that you have to do. You don't have to actually produce a X many pages paper, anything like that. But the outline should be substantial. It should be informative to me. It should give me an idea of what your project is all about, really. Okay. So SCI's, okay, any other questions on this first step is a 250 word abstract. It can be less than that, but it shouldn't be just a couple of sentences. It should be substantial. The final product a few weeks down the road will have more in it, a 500 word abstract, and we'll have the outline and the references to give me an idea of what the whole project is about. Okay, everyone happy with that? They say you'll thank me for, believe it or not, for forcing you to do something sooner rather than later. Okay, good. I see. Oh, I see lots of thumbs up. I like that. Thank you. Okay, back to screen sharing. I have something I want to share with you. You know, I try to keep informed about, or to keep you informed about ways in which the material that we do in linguistics, in historical linguistics, has some relevance to or some there's some relevance to what we do, or some application of what we do in the real world. And I was reading an article in the New York Times, or an opinion piece in the New York Times from on Saturday, I guess. Republicans and Democrats no longer speak the same language. So language was in the title, so of course it attracted my attention. A dictionary for these polarized times. I'm not presenting this with any sort of political axe to grind, but the author, there she is, Michelle Cottle, the author, I thought had some interesting point, because she said that we're not speaking that Democrats and Republicans are not speaking the same language. They're assigning different meanings to the same lexical item and arguing over that. And one in particular that shows this is the debate, I don't know whether you've been following it, about infrastructure and this bill that President Biden wants to, this program that he wants Congress to enact, which he considers to be an infrastructure. And she says this may be the hottest linguistic battle now raging. As the president and his people define it, infrastructure includes everything from the care economy, community colleges, electric vehicles, to job training, domestic manufacturing, scientific research. So they have an expanded view of what infrastructure means. So think about the ways we've looked at the expansion of words semantically, the broadening of words semantically. And she says the Democrats, that's a Democratic definition, where Republicans are pushing a more traditional definition limited largely to physical transportation related structures such as roads, bridges, and ports. And then they have this, they quote this former director of Office of Management and Budget as saying, as talking about real infrastructure. So remember, does anyone recall the etymology of the word etymology? We talked about it in the first week of class. Anyone recall?
It was
It
like
had to-
truth.
I'm sorry, go on, Kenna, please.
It was like the truth of the word.
Yeah, exactly. So for the etymon part of etymology, it comes from a Greek word meaning not the origin of a word or the meaning of a word, but the true meaning of a word. And so it's interesting to see this guy here, Mr. Vogt, talking about real infrastructure as opposed to what other kinds of infrastructure. So he's really sort of focusing on the fact that there's that there's a narrow traditional definition and this broader definition that the Democrats are pushing. And to me, this sort of brings home in a very current events kind of way the issues that we've talked about with regard to semantic broadening. We're seeing it right before our very eyes with regard to this definition of infrastructure. And we can use it, of course, metaphorically. We can talk about, and in fact, all around the university, you hear talk about the infrastructure for teaching. So Zoom provides an infrastructure for our teaching online. That's a sort of common way in which it's Zoom is talked about in administrative and pedagogical circles here on campus, and that you can think of that as a metaphorical use of the term, or you can think of it as and remember when we talked about metaphor, we talked about the question of whether the metaphor has become sort of entrenched in the sort of common definition of the term, or whether it's still metaphorical, still in extended sense. And we're right on that cusp, I think, with the word infrastructure. All of it brought home by this political debate here about the infrastructure program / bill that President Biden and the Democrats are interested in. So anyway, I couldn't let that go by without bringing it to your attention. I will. Let me put if you're interested, I'll put the link to this in chat for you. But you all see the relationship, I hope, and you all see why, and you can see why, of course, I would be excited and interested in this and wanting to bring it to your attention. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so back to more traditional screen sharing, if you will. And let me turn to our homework. The homework assignments. I want to go over those. I hope you've had a chance to look at my comments on I've graded both of them, so you should I just finished grading the one for today a little while ago, but I hope you had a chance to look over at least the French one. I'll kind of talk through what I was looking for in that, and then if you have any questions about it, you can see. You may have seen this note to self. For the future, make it just about, for me, this is a note to me for next year, make it just about the change in the root. So a lot of you focused on what happened with the endings, and I was so focused in putting this together on what happened in the root that I didn't draw that distinction. But that's okay. I mean, it was all fair game, and you got to think about what more happened between Latin and Old French, especially besides just the changes in the root. But what I was looking for is for you to have notice that you have an ah in the first syllable in Latin throughout the paradigm of the word for love, and it develops differently, sometimes becoming an and sometimes staying as ah. And the difference is conditioned by the accent. So a stressed or accented ah develops into and it does that regularly in the 4 instances in which we have a stressed ah in initial position. And in the 2 instances where you get something different, the initial ah is unstressed. So what I was hoping you would notice is that, and formulate it as a statement, is that accented or stressed ah becomes unstressed ah remains as ah between Latin and Old French. And then the next step is, the next step is what happens between Old French and Modern French. There, as I say, there is, of course, a lot of other stuff going on here, but I'm just going to focus on what happened to the root, the ah plus m root of this. And probably in the future, I should segment off endings like that and so forth to and tell you to focus just on the root. I'm doing so right now to remind myself. Okay. Then between Old French and Modern French, what we see is that the vowel in the root in the first and second plural has changed to e, from a to e. So I wanted you to think about whether this was is this a sound change? Is this a further sound change of a of any sort? It's say an initial position becoming e, or is something else going on? And the little bit of additional data that I gave you here, bear in mind that there are forms such as avoir from still in French from late Latin bere, where you have an unstressed a that I don't give you the Old French form, but here's the Modern French form. It ends up as a. So unstressed a in the word to have remains as such in initial position. Unstressed a in the word alors, meaning then, from Latin ad illa or hora, where there, again we have an initial a in the earlier stage and remaining as an a in ultimately in Modern French, alors. That was supposed to signal to you that this change of a to e here in the first and second person plural forms could not be a sound change, because here are initial ahs that remain as such. Initial ah here and initial ah here. And where do they change? Well, they change just in the case that they're part of a paradigm in which the other forms of the paradigm have e. And therefore, what I was looking for here was that this development from Latin to Old French involved sound change affecting the first syllable. And from Old French to Modern French, we have an analogical change here and here, what we referred to in class as paradigm leveling. You have a more uniform paradigm, or remember Sturdivant's way of talking about it, a more regular paradigm in Modern French with e throughout the paradigm for the vowel of the root, as opposed to Old French where there's a blip, as it were, a bump in the road that gets leveled out on the way to Modern French. So that was what I was looking for, and for I'm those of you who took the time and trouble to discuss what happened in the endings and so forth. That's great. You can never go wrong in thinking about historical linguistics and cataloging changes and such. So that was there was certainly something beneficial to that. But the ultimate point that I wanted to make was that the change from amons, ames to aimant and aimer could not have been a sound change, and therefore must be an analogical change, and in particular a case of paradigm leveling. Okay, any questions on that? Does that make sense when you sort of see it or hear it laid out like that? I hope. Okay, I see a few indications that this works for you, so I'm glad to hear that. Good, more than a few indications now. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so let's look at the Cree one that you did for today. I need to find it. Yeah, okay. So in this case, this was somewhat more involved, but actually ends up being exactly the same type of exercise. You had I gave you some facts, and in this case, you had to assemble the facts into the sort of three stages of development: the proto-language stage, the stage after the first wave of development. That's what I meant by asking for the expected outcome in Cree, and then measuring against the actual forms that occur. So it was the same kind of 3-step process, kind of like the Latin to Old French and then Old French to Modern French, or the cases that we looked at involving Latin and Greek and English in the slides on analogy from last week. So it starts with your being told that there was this, excuse me, this noun stem, Chippewagosk in Proto-Algonquian. It was inherited into Cree, so we expect to find a form of this word in later Cree. You're told what the endings are for this kind of noun. This is referred to as an inanimate noun because it's a thing, even though it turns out somewhat interestingly that there are things that from our point of view are might be thought of as inanimate, like a pipe, for instance, that that in Cree is classified with the animate nouns, and there's a lot of debate as to exactly what that classification means. That's just an interesting aside. But Chippewagosk is an inanimate noun, a thing, a non-living thing, and the Proto-Algonquian noun endings for such nouns distinguish that a singular in e from a plural in a. And you were to give the expected paradigm, start by putting together the Proto-Algonquian paradigm. Well, you have a stem here, Chippewagosk, and you have the endings here for singular and plural. So putting those together gives you a stem that would look like, or a paradigm that would look like this. Chippewagosk as the stem, and then singular e, and then the same. So this would be singular, and the plural would look just like that, except it would have the plural ending. So the original paradigm, and these you should mark with an asterisk. Why would we put an asterisk with them? What's the purpose of the asterisk here?
To show it's reconstructed.
Right, to show that it's a reconstructed form. This is hypothetical. It involves some speculation, but it's pretty solid speculation because you're given the starting points on you're given all the pieces, and you sort of sew them together to give these forms to start with. So this would be the Proto-Algonquian form. Proto-Algonquian form, okay. And then the next thing we want is the expected Cree form. So we could think of this as sort of pre-Cree. It's the form that would have resulted from the various documented changes, and that's what C and D and E are all about here. That's the expected Cree outcome, and then we'll measure that against the actual Cree outcome. Oops, I'll just leave it like that. And so how do these three change? So we've taken care of A and B. How do these three changes, C, D, and E, give us a reasonable idea of what the outcome should be in Cree? What's going to happen to the singular? Which of these facts, C, D, and E, is relevant to the development of the singular? Anyone? Well, is it D? D talks about final A. Is there a final A in Chippewagoski? Clearly not. Thank you. Kenna, I guess that's what your X means, right? Okay, good. Oh, that's a no. Right. That's the no. Right. So how is C or D or D relevant to the development of the singular? Anyone?
The singular. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Sure. I think you're muted right now.
I thought I heard another person.
I don't see any other
Okay. I'll keep going.
movement, so
The
you've got the floor.
singular one would lose the I at the end because of step C.
Right. So C tells us that an I in final position is lost. And I don't know if you remember the problem set, but it dealt with K's and I's in final position and what happened to them and so forth. And I was modeling that on the some of the developments that happened with final sequences of final K and I in Algonquian languages. So even though that was a made up problem, it was based on the reality of our Algonquian reconstructions and historical developments. So our expected outcome then would be Chipwagask based on on fact C. And then is there anything further that's relevant here? Well, D we decided wasn't relevant, but E is relevant. Okay, you want to continue to go with it?
Sure.
Anna?
So now Cree doesn't permit word final consonant clusters, which includes the SK at the end of this word. And so now you lose the second consonant, so you lose the K at the end.
Exactly. So this K gets deleted, and we end up then with Chipwagas with just a final S. Okay, good. And what is the relevance of fact D then? We decided it's not relevant for the singular, but is it relevant? Why did I throw that in there?
Just
Yeah.
to show that it doesn't change.
Right. So we would expect it to end up as Chipwagaska.
Yeah.
So we now have our expected Cree outcome. Chipwagas in the singular and Chipwagaska with a K in the plural. And now everyone clear how we got to that? If you're not, please ask. Okay, I'm assuming then that everyone understands that. And Chipwagaska we would actually probably want to put with an asterisk because it turns out not to occur. So this is this sort of crucial missing link. And what we actually find then is the actual Cree is Chipwagas as expected, but the unexpected development is the plural where it ends up as Chipwagasa, like that. And that's what this fact here tells you. So now you're charged with explaining what happened to give this actually occurring paradigm. And here, a lot of you, everyone had some idea of what was going on here, which was good. I was very happy to see that. And some of you explained it in different ways. And I think it was interesting that the different ways in which they were explained actually end up at getting us to the same point and underscore the point that I made last week about some of the finer differentiations that are made in textbooks, for instance, about different types of analogy, really, I think, are beside the point. And what we need to focus on is the results of the influence of one form over another. And if you state it in those broad terms, then really analogy takes in a very wide range of different kinds of influence of one form over another. Because we know that with this particular change here of Chipwagaska to Chipwagasa, why am I moving in the direction of talking about it as analogy? What facts or what fact or facts tell you that this change of SK to S at the end of this word is not a matter of sound change? Kenna?
Well, step E, would it apply to the plural form since it has the A at the end and the environment is word final?
Right. So it can't be right. So some of you were sort of tempted and or seduced, maybe I should say, and you say, oh, we have this cluster reduction that took place. Maybe that's what's going on. And the answer is maybe, but the cluster reduction as it's described here, as Kenneth says, applies to word final clusters. And what we have here is not a word final cluster because of the vowel ah. So what further fact is relevant here for telling you that this is not a matter of sound change?
Well, the singular form doesn't have a K either. So I think the plural form was like, hey, look at our singular. We want to be like the singular.
Okay.
And
And
both
what do we call that?
paradigm leveling.
Yeah, that could be paradigm leveling. So this looks analogical. There is one detail that tells you that you want to look to analogy here, and that is this word for Canada goose. What does the development of the word for Canada goose tell you?
Oh, I see. It still has the same environment. Like, but the deletion of the K doesn't apply to that one.
Right.
But it does apply to our arrow. So it's what was the word? Sporadic.
Good. Yeah, it's sporadic. So this change is sporadic in nature, and therefore we should be very suspicious of talking about it as a sound change. And therefore we look to something else. Is there another explanation? Is there another motivation for this development to just having an S here? And as Kenneth said, and as many of you said, this could be an instance of paradigm leveling. Now, everyone okay with that? Okay, I don't see any quizzical. I see a few positive indications even, which is good. Now, some of you said that there's another angle on this, or that could be taken, and that is you talked about this in terms of reanalysis. Would someone who talked about this in terms of reanalysis want to enlighten us as to why, as to what's going on when viewed from the perspective of reanalysis? I know there are some of you out there. No? Okay, Rebecca, go for it.
Yeah, so once the K is gone from the singular, we would probably expect the singular to be like the more basic form, maybe heard more often or something. And so the speakers might then take that to be the stem, because now at this point, there's no longer a singular marker, or there's a zero singular marker. So then they form a plural based on a stem that doesn't have that K.
Right, exactly right. So some of you explained this in terms of just the way Rebecca did just now, in terms of this singular form being treated as if it were the stem. And that's when we say reanalysis, because it would be a new stem. And if that stem is taken as the as equivalent to the singular, then you would form a plural based on the newly created, or the newly identified, let's put it that way. Newly identified thus Chipuagas, like that. So then in the same way that for Proto-Algonquian, we said that you take the stem and add the endings to it. You're doing the same thing here, except the endings are different. The ending is a zero ending in the singular and an a in the plural. But this involves then treating this Chipuagas with just the s as the stem upon which the plural can be built. So some of you explain this in terms of reanalysis, and that's also a good way of thinking about it. Now, why do you think I said that this particular example sort of underscores what I said about it not really mattering, perhaps, how many different labels we attach? Can anyone see why talking about this as paradigm leveling or talking about this as reanalysis of the stem really amounts to the same thing? Does anyone see how those two are essentially giving you the same motivation? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Rebecca, is that you trying to answer, or is that left over from your previous answer?
Left over from the previous answer.
Okay, but Kyle to the rescue. What do you have to say, Kyle?
So essentially the reanalysis of the stem led to a paradigm leveling of sorts.
Yeah, and paradigm leveling in a sense is treating the S as the stem final element and spreading it through into the plural. It's not a huge paradigm, of course, it's just a singular and a plural form, but nonetheless, it's paradigm leveling by introducing the S or modeling the plural after the singular is really essentially saying the singular is the stem and you add the "a" to get the plural. If you talk about it in terms of paradigm leveling, then what you're led to is basically saying the same thing, that the singular is the stem. So whether you call it reanalysis, whether you call it leveling, you're in each case you're invoking a particular value being assigned to the singular and basing the plural on that sort of new interpretation of what the singular form is. So that's why I say that whether you call it leveling, that the S of the singular spreads into the plural, or whether you call it reanalysis, that the singular form with the final S is treated as the stem, you end up at the same place, and you're in each case focusing on how to analyze the singular. And that's why I say it sort of underscores what to my mind is a less than necessary over differentiation of different types of analogy. I think the key thing is that there's the influence of one form involved in the development of another form that's distinct from just the physiological production of speech, distinct from the sound change as we've been talking about it. Okay, so that's the kind of changes, sound changes were involved to some extent, giving us the loss of the I, for instance, but the SK to S part in the plural of the word for arrow was a matter of morphological change, analogy, reanalysis, all basically the same kind of development. How do you know how to classify them? Well, what Kenna referred to here about the stability, let's say, of the SKA sequence at the end of the word in Canada Goose tells us that this development of Chipwagaska to Chipwagasa is not a matter of sound change, but rather must be something else. Is something else in this case being analogy. So in many ways, this is just like the French, the Latin to French example or homework that you did, and like the paradigm leveling and analogy cases that we talked about in class last week. But it was just a chance to sort of approach them from a different angle with different and with you providing different kinds of answers, putting together your own paradigm and working from there, for instance. Okay, any questions on that? All right. Good. I will assume that you have all understood that, and we'll move on. analogy is usually talked about in the context of morphological change, the changes in the form of words. And that makes sense because the way I've defined analogy, it's the influence of one form over another. So form is involved. But analogy actually has a much broader range of application. And I haven't talked a lot about, and I won't unfortunately talk a lot about syntactic change, but we can see the effects of analogy in syntax leading to changes in the syntactic form. Now, syntax involves not the forms of individual words, but rather the way words combine to form larger units like phrases or sentences. And there are lots of changes. There's a whole chapter in the textbook about syntactic change that deals with matters of word order, for instance, and other kinds of combinatorics that give you phrases and sentences out of combinations of individual words. So I'm just going to be focusing here on a very small bit of what could be construed as syntactic change. But I want you to see it sort of, there's a natural bridge from what we've been talking about with analogical developments into this type of, these examples of syntactic change, because I think they involve, I think it's pretty clear that they involve analogy at the level of syntax, as opposed to analogy at the level of words and morphology that we were looking at last week and that you looked at for your homework assignments. So the first example involves the syntax of the verb provide, where we have what I characterize here as older constructions. And you just have to take my word for it that these are older constructions, but the kind of philological work that goes into determining what information we can glean from older texts would be relevant here as well, and giving us a basis for talking about a chronological progression and an innovative new construction. So with the verb provide, we have two older constructions. Just a, hang on just a second. Excuse me, just a second. I'm going to have to go. Sorry, we're having some work done at the house, and there's some discussion that needs to be going on. But I think my wife and son are going to take charge. So back to the linguistics here. Well, actually, hang on a sec. Okay, back in the saddle. we're having work done on some large trees, and it's unbelievably expensive. And we wanted to be sure that everyone understood what was going on and how much we would be paying and so forth. So anyway, everything's cool now. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so back to John. These older constructions with the verb provide have two forms. Provide John with food. So the thing that John gets provided with can be marked with a with preposition, and John can be treated as the direct object. Provide John with food. But we can also say provide food for John. That is food taken as the direct object and John as the beneficiary of the provision of goods. An innovative construction. So we have these two possibilities here as the older constructions. An innovative construction that has come into being in English has the form provide John food. That is, so it's like this one here, except without with. So provide John food. And it seems that this is can be understood in terms of a model for a verb like give, where we have both and have had in English for a long time, both the construction with give, the object given as the direct object, and then John, the beneficiary, marked with a preposition indicating him as the recipient or the beneficiary. And that alternates with give John a book, where John seems to be like the direct object and the direct he's still the recipient, but he's in terms of the syntax, he is the direct object. So give John a book, give a book to John, provide food for John. If we provide we have a verb followed by an inanimate entity that is transferred, and the recipient of the transfer marked with a preposition, and that we have in just, you can think of this as like a proportional analogy, just as give a book to John is to provide food for John, as give John a book would be to provide John food, like that. So you can think of it as a proportional analogy. And in this case, we're not talking about just the influence of one form over another, but we're talking about a model and reshaping a phrase based on an existing model. And that's really what analogy is all about. At the level of morphology, we talked about one form influencing another form. Here we have we might call it a construction or a phrasal combination. Give a book to John, give John a book. And we can, if we think of it as sort of a proportional kind of analogy, give a book to John is to give John a book, as provide food for John is to provide John food, solving for X. So analogy, so this is a syntactic change in the syntax of provide. It's a new constructional possibility for the verb provide, and it's we can understand it in terms of it being based on the model of verbs like give. Yeah, Kenna, you got a question?
I just have a comment. I do this with recommend, and my mom is just like, no, she recommended a movie to me, and I just say like she recommended me the movie, and she's like, yeah, I don't like it.
So you see right before your very eyes with that is this dialogue within your household about, or on the phone or whatever with your mother. You see exactly the process of the spread of an innovative construction, spreading to a different verb, but the same model is there. So thank you. This is exactly, this proves my point, so to speak. And Kyle says that his mom and him, that you guys have the same debate. Yeah, okay. And I think it's, and to some extent, these innovative constructions are associated with younger speakers, but I guarantee you 50 years from now, you'll be having debates with your grandkids about, can you really say that? No, no, no. Yes, you can. No, you can't. The same kind of debate. And this is, does anyone recall the term that we had in talking about, that we used in talking about the differences in, hang on just, could you be a little quieter, please? Could you be a little quieter, please? When we were talking about the Little League baseball players, the T-ball players in Upper Arlington, and the meaning of the verb being, we used a term to describe the difference in the older and younger speakers with different grammatical sensibilities, all in the same speech community. Does anyone recall what that term was? Well, I'll put it in chat right now and you can see. Apparent time. We talked about the apparent time construct, where the chronological differences between older and younger speakers within the same speech community could be interpreted as indicating an older form versus an innovative form of the language. And that's what we see here with, as I say, right before our eyes, with Kenna and her debates with her mother, and Kyle and his debates with his mother. So thank you, guys. This is great. And you see how it's analogical, because there's a model, namely the syntax of the verb shift, but it isn't just a single form, but the model here is a whole construction, a phrase involving sequences of words, and that is the model for this innovative construction. What is it about provide, give, and even recommend that that makes for a compelling analogical connection here? Does anyone see what's at issue there? How about give and provide? Even the way we talked about it should make that clear. At what level do give and provide have something in common? I don't know, Ken, if that's left over from your previous comment, but your hand is still up. So if you want to.
No, I missed it, but if you repeat the question, I can give it a shot.
What is it about give and provide that sort of links them in a way that would make give the syntax of give a suitable model for the syntax of provide?
I know, or just to add another aspect, I know donate is like somewhat related to these two.
Yep.
Well, they just have the similar meaning.
Exactly. So they're similar on a semantic level. The semantics of these words are similar, the meanings are similar, and that means that they can provide a suitable model one for the other. So there's a semantic link there. And in fact, with donate, you will see in the linguistics literature, it has been claimed that donate does not behave like give, that you cannot donate donate the museum a painting. And yet, if you try combinations like that on the internet, you will find exactly that string. So there are people who say sentences like, he donated the painting, he donated the museum the painting. And even though there are well-known linguists who have claimed that such sentences are ungrammatical in English. Maybe ungrammatical for them, but there are other speakers who are innovatively following the model of verbs like give, provide, and even recommend involves a kind of transfer of information. So even recommend is the one that Kenna was talking about, is semantically similar, I think, are sort of part of the same semantic sphere. Again, we can do this sort of thing with a different verb and older and innovative constructions. the older construction of a cause of using the verb have in a causative way. So I will have John copy this for us. There are speakers who innovatively insert a to with that. I will have John to copy this for us, where it means I will make John do it. I will have him do it. I will. It doesn't mean I will have John around in order to make the copies. The meaning is the causative meaning. I'll have John copy this for us innovatively. I'll have John to copy this for us. And here we can look at causative verbs like get. I will get John to copy this for us. This is maybe a somewhat colloquial use of the verb get, but get in this sense has a causative meaning, and it occurs obligatorily with the to. I will get John to copy this for us, and that model has been extended then to to give an innovative syntax with have. I will have John to copy this for us. So again, the same verbs in the same semantic sphere are providing the basis for the innovative syntax. Or that's the basis for the linkage. Remember when we talked about analogy, we said there's a relationship that's established between items. In this case, a relationship established between the construction with get and the construction with have, and the construction with get provides a model for the innovative form of the innovative syntax with have. You remember we talked about the what I refer to as the phonic interference, or a kind of contamination. Remember the example of that we had of femelle ending up as female, where there was a phonic link, a semantic link as well, but a phonic, a sound-based link between the M vowel L in femelle, borrowed from French into English, and the word male with an independent origin in English. And we can see a sort of phonic element at work as well in some of these analogies that have syntactic consequences. So there's an older construction with as far as that has a verbal tag of some sort, like as far as John is concerned, forget about him, or as far as John goes, forget about him. So there's some verbal tag that occurs after the sort of focal point of as far as. And there's and this is demonstrably the older construction. The innovative construction cancels or gets rid of, deletes the verbal tag altogether, and just says something like, as far as John, forget about him. As far as John, forget about him. This is increasingly common. It's something I've noticed within my lifetime, but there are actually examples of this truncated expression as far back as the early 1800s. So, but going even farther back, you find the verbal tag construction with as far as. So how do we explain this? Some people say it involves a reanalysis of as far as being essentially like a single preposition, rather than introducing a clause. John is concerned. So in that form, viewed that way, you could say, well, it's just a matter of truncating the verbal tag because as far as is taken as a preposition. So it might involve reanalysis, but I think it's awfully hard to separate this from the semantically similar and phonically similar expression as for. And if you think about it, any place you can say as far as X is concerned or not, you can also say as for. So as far as John is concerned, has the same function as saying, as for John, forget about him. As for Ohio State, they're number one. As for OSU linguistics, the best in the world. You know, any place where you could say as far as X is concerned, you can also say as for X. And so they're semantically and functionally related, and they're phonically related as for in this case and as far as in this case, but they're different. So the for here is indeed a real preposition, as for John, taking an object of the preposition, whereas here as far as is serving as a complementizer, a subordinating element, taking a whole clause as far as John is concerned. So if we add in this phonically and functionally related as for X, then we have a basis for understanding where this innovative construction could have come from. So it's analogical, where the link is phonic, in partly semantic, partly functional, but phonic in nature as well. Oops. Phonic in nature as well, with this as for. The similarity between as for and as far being a basis for the contamination or the analogical impinging of this construction on this verbal tag construction. Okay. Any questions on that? I think we have the same sort of phonic link, and remember that this phonic link was what I was the basis for my account of not just femelle and female, but also our sort of paradigm case was the academia as an innovative pronunciation of academia based on macadamia, where the phonic link was the only one there. Here, there's a semantic or a functional link as well, but I think the phonic side, the sound-based side, is really where it cannot be ignored here. And we see this also in a construction with seeing and being, if you will, where we can use seeing as a way of introducing a set of circumstances that make that allow for a main clause utterance to be relevant to the action in a main clause. So seeing what? Well, seeing that John is here, that sort of sets the stage for, that gives you the circumstances under which the main clause that the meaning expressed in the main clause can hold. So seeing that John is here, we can start. We can start the meeting, or we can start the class, or whatever. Now, another way of saying that same thing, also in older construction, is it being the case that John is here. It's a slightly more convoluted way of saying it, but it basically means the same thing as seeing that John is here. It being the case that John is here, namely the fact that John is here, sets the stage. It's the circumstances under which the action of the main clause can hold. And what you can hear as an innovative construction is this same meaning expressed this way: being that John is here, we can start. And this is actually, this being that John is here is actually somewhat anomalous, because we would expect there to be English normally in this kind of what's referred to in the literature as, hang on a sec, as an extraposed clause construction. We would normally have an it with the verb to be. So like I have here, it is the case that, or it seems that John is here, or it appears that John is here. Those would all be extraposed clauses. So this innovative construction is actually somewhat anomalous within English in not having an overt subject it with the verb to be in this so-called extraposed clause construction. So how do we get this sort of newly created anomaly in the syntax of English? Well, I think it has to do with the phonic similarity of seeing that X where we don't expect we wouldn't expect an it or a subject of any sort with that, because you as the speaker are the one who's doing this, or you as the addressees and me as the speaker, we're the ones who are seeing. So that's the subject of seeing is clear. But I think the phonic similarity of seeing and being really leads to kind of a crossing, as I say here, kind of contamination, a crossing in the same way that femelle crossed with male gives female, or academia crossed with macadamia gives academia. I think the phonic similarity here gives us the basis for the innovative construction being. So seeing, being is assimilated to the syntax of seeing, therefore no it is needed. And the link is, they're semantically, functionally similar, and there's this phonic similarity as well. So this gives you just some examples of the use of analogy or the workings of analogy in syntax as well. It's not just restricted to morphology. Okay, well, we're almost out of time. I haven't shown you a t-shirt yet today, so my t-shirt is really an advertisement for next class. In the next class, we're going to talk about language contact, and in particular, the languages of Southeastern Europe. What I have here is a t-shirt with all of the, a whole bunch of Eastern European languages listed, and there it is. And I can even give you a close-up of that. All of these different languages, such as Macedonian and Slovenian and Albanian over here, and as well as some that are not quite so obviously so, like Moldovan, but none of Bulgarian here and so forth. So these are what we'll be talking about on Wednesday, is the historical interactions between the languages, not just of Eastern Europe more generally, but specifically Southeastern Europe, the peninsula known as the Balkans, and the ways in which the language contact in the Balkans has been has shaped the languages today, languages like Albanian, Greek, Macedonian, Bulgarian, and Turkish, and others. So the t-shirt du jour is an advertisement for Wednesday's class. Don't miss it. And that's where we'll end for the day. If there are no questions or comments or whatever. Okay, great. I will see you all then on Wednesday. Don't forget Wednesday. I want you to turn in, actually not before class, but by the end of the day. So by 11:59 p.m. turn in this 250 maximum 250 word abstract, and we will talk about the Balkans. And there's a question. Good. You like that? I like it too. Thank you. Okay, so have a good day. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. And I will see you then on Wednesday. So long.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Stop recording.